It was the day before Thanksgiving, a time when airports buzzed with holiday travelers eager to reunite with family. At Portland International Airport, among the crowd was a man who seemed utterly unremarkable. He was neatly dressed with a dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and a black tie. He carried no luggage except a slim black briefcase. His name on the ticket read Dan Cooper. Cooper purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle for $20, paying cash. Nothing about him drew attention. There were no outbursts, no odd behaviors. He boarded Northwest Orient Airlines and quietly took his seat near the back, 18C. To anyone observing, he could have been a businessman returning home or a traveler headed to a family gathering. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper ordered a bourbon and soda. He smoked a cigarette as he sipped, staring calmly out the window. But just 10 minutes into the flight, he handed a note to Florence Schaffner, a flight attendant. Initially, she didn't read it, assuming it was another passenger trying to flirt, a common occurrence for flight attendants at the time. She tucked it into her pocket and continued down the aisle, but Cooper leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner's hands trembled as she unfolded the note. It was typed neatly and to the point. Cooper demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, 2 main and 2 reserve, and a fuel truck ready to refill the plane upon landing in Seattle. He emphasized that if his demands weren't met, he would detonate the bomb mid-air. To prove he wasn't bluffing, Cooper opened his briefcase. Inside, Schaffner saw red cylinders attached to wires and a battery. Whether it was real or not didn't matter. The stakes were too high to risk calling his bluff. Schaffner quickly relayed Cooper's demands to Captain William Scott, who immediately contacted air traffic control. What had started as a routine 30-minute flight now spiraled into an unfolding crisis. The FBI and airline executives scrambled to meet Cooper's demands while minimizing risk to passengers and crew. Meanwhile, Cooper remained eerily calm. He even reassured the flight attendants that no one would be hurt as long as his instructions were followed. When Schaffner returned to her seat after delivering his demands, Cooper leaned back, sipping his bourbon as if nothing were amiss. He even offered to pay for his drink, handing her a folded bill with a faint smile. Passengers noticed the delay but remained unaware of the hijacking. The crew told them it was due to a minor mechanical issue. Below, at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, chaos erupted as law enforcement and airline officials worked to gather the ransom money and parachutes. The $200,000 was prepared in unmarked $20 bills. Each bill's serial number was recorded for later tracking. The parachutes proved harder to source, but agents managed to procure 4 from a local skydiving school. By the time the plane landed in Seattle at 5:39 p.m., everything Cooper had asked for was ready. The aircraft taxied to an isolated, brightly lit section of the runway. Curtains were drawn over the cabin windows to prevent law enforcement from taking any surprise action. Following Cooper's orders, the ransom money and parachutes were brought aboard by airline employees. Only then did Cooper release the passengers and 2 flight attendants, keeping the cockpit crew and 1 flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, on board. With the money in hand, Cooper laid out his next plan. He instructed the crew to fly south toward Mexico City. His directions were specific. The Boeing 727 was to fly at an altitude of 10,000 feet, with landing gear down, flaps set at 15 degrees, and cabin unpressurized. These flight parameters were highly unusual, but they ensured the plane remained slow and low, ideal conditions for what Cooper intended next. As the plane climbed into the night sky, Cooper retreated to the rear. He secured the ransom money in a knapsack, fastened one of the parachutes, and prepared to jump. At approximately 8 p.m., somewhere over the dense forests of southwestern Washington, he opened the rear stairway and leaped into the stormy darkness. When the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, hours later, law enforcement swarmed aboard, only to find Cooper gone. The bomb, real or fake, was missing. The FBI launched Northwest Hijacking, an exhaustive investigation that would span decades. Search teams scoured the remote wilderness where Cooper was believed to have landed. Helicopters, ground crews, and even river dredging operations combed the area. Yet, no trace of the man, his parachutes, or the ransom money was found. Some experts argued he likely perished in the jump. The weather that night was brutal: freezing rain, strong winds, and near zero visibility. Cooper wore only a business suit and loafers, hardly adequate for a nighttime parachute landing in rugged terrain. Others suggested he survived, disappearing into obscurity with the money. Nearly a decade later, a clue reignited public interest. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was playing along the Columbia River when he unearthed 3 bundles of decayed $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom money. This discovery raised more questions than it answered. Had Cooper buried the money? Had it washed downstream after being lost during the jump? Why was only a small portion of the ransom recovered? Over the years, the FBI investigated more than 800 suspects. Among them were some particularly compelling figures. One was Richard Floyd McCoy, a Vietnam veteran and skydiver who hijacked a plane under nearly identical circumstances just months after Cooper's heist. McCoy demanded $500,000 and used a parachute to escape mid-flight. He was eventually caught and sentenced to prison, but some believe he was the real D.B. Cooper. The FBI, however, dismissed this theory due to differences in appearance and modus operandi. Another suspect was Robert Rackstraw, a former Army paratrooper with a murky past. He had the skills and the temperament for the crime, and his life story seemed to align with Cooper's mysterious profile, yet no concrete evidence linked him to the hijacking. The D.B. Cooper case leaves behind more questions than answers. If he survived, why hasn't he resurfaced? He is often portrayed as a modern-day Robin Hood, a criminal who outsmarted the system without causing harm.